Welcome to this PayTrace Power30. My name is Sam Johnson. I'll be your host today. For those of you that might be new to these Power30 webinars, what to expect is a 30-minute webinar. This is your insight into PayTrace, into the industry, and into some best practices where we're going to chat about some things that can help lead to your success. Now, you will notice as you log in, you are muted. That is intentional because we've got a big group of people on this call and we want to reduce some background noise. So if you have questions, comments, emotional outbursts over the next half hour, please open up the Q&A box on your Zoom panel and send us any and all of those. Now, let's get right into today's topic. And to help discuss our topic is a very special guest, Mr. Michael Cannon. Welcome, Michael.
Hey, Sam Johnson. How's it going?
Now, a lot of you probably know Michael. He's on our sales team, and he was also on a Power30 back when we were still in studio. Michael, I want to say that was probably like 3-4 years ago.
Right. It feels like 10 years ago, but it was only a couple of years ago. Yeah.
It's been a bit, and you were a bit more sunburnt at the time, but looking good, feeling good, right?
Yeah.
So for those of our audience that might not know who you are, could you give us a quick intro into maybe your role? How long have you been with PayTrace?
Sure. Yeah. Glad to do it. My name is Michael Cannon. Thanks everyone for joining. I'm scrolling through the names here of the attendees, seeing some of you that I know. So fun to see your names on here. I've been with PayTrace since 2017. So this is my 5th year. I'm our, let's see, what's my title? National Sales Executive. So I form partnerships in our channel sales model, work with a lot of ISOs and partners of all shapes and sizes. Yeah, so that's what I do here at PayTrace.
Nice. And you've had a lot of industry experience. You've actually directly sold merchant services. You've been with processors.
Right. I spent a lot of my career with a very large bank who I won't name, but they're a bank in America, and a couple other merchant entities as well. But yeah, so I've been in the industry, gosh, over 20 years now. Wow, that's interesting to say. I haven't really said that on a webinar yet. 20 years. Yeah. I have a son in college too, for those keeping track. I'm my age starts with 4 now. But yeah, lots of industry experience, and, merchant's one of those funny industries that once you know it, that's kind of the merchant industry has a way of keeping people, engaged. And so there's a lot of us who've been around for a really long time, and it's engaging and exciting in ways, and fun, and there's a different problem every day to solve. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is some strategy and how you address, I guess, some of those pricing challenges and opportunities.
So that's a great lead in, and I wanted people to understand your background because you've done this for so long, that kind of the ins and outs of everything, and good practices versus bad practices. Right. So really, we want to get into this topic about price strategy and really with the focus on business to business payments. Right. We're kind of a B2B first gateway. So that's definitely going to be a topic that we're going to focus on. But I want to start out maybe talking a little bit about the lens of portfolio diversity and why that is super important. Right. I know a lot of our partners really like to focus on a niche, which I think is really good, right? You focus on restaurant or B2B or something in particular. But maybe, Michael, in your opinion, right, why would it make sense to kind of have a diverse portfolio of accounts?
Well, we've all seen this play out in the last couple of years. I think the importance, especially of different markets and like you said, diversification in your portfolio. Usually we use that term as it applies to investments and stock, but certainly, your merchant portfolio needs to be diverse as well, because what we saw in the pandemic was that portfolios who were very heavy restaurant retail got hit the hardest. I mean, we went months and even a couple of years where those industries were just severely impacted, right? We had partners that mentioned that they lost 30% of their revenue or more in that amount of time. So that's a difficult thing to manage. And so a lot of our partners started talking about balancing their portfolio with more B2B, non-restaurant retail, card not present, e-commerce, because when everyone stayed home, no one was going to restaurants or stores, and we found out that diversification is very important. So there's some thoughts around that I think we'll probably get into during the rest of the conversation. But there's sales cycles, there's pricing, there's profit. It's a whole different profit engine that comes from that from that B2B part of the market. So I won't jump ahead, Sam. I'm sure you have a bunch of questions, so we'll go in order of what you have planned here.
I will say I'm keeping Michael on his toes. This isn't scripted by any means, but he knows roughly what we're going to be talking about. You brought up something interesting that made me think, right? We usually think of diversified portfolios in the lens of investment portfolios. But when I think about merchant portfolios, and for all of our agent partners, ISO partners, that's really what it is, right? We're making money off of residuals on this. So sometimes there might be some really good months, sometimes there might be some not good months. So how can we make sure that we have kind of a stable, steady income? We have more good months than bad months. I've actually got a poll pre-built in here, and I just want to launch this really quick because I want to get some feedback from our audience here today. But I want to know, how was your accounts affected with COVID, right? Were you one of those that had a pretty big hit, right? Was it mostly unchanged? Was it pretty insulated, right? I think within PayTrace, within our portfolio, it was very insulated. B2B was pretty protected from the pandemic. So, or did it grow, right? Were you out there just killing it? There were a few industries in, medical, cleaning, that we saw a huge growth in. I'm going to end this in 3, 2, 1. And it's funny, looking at the data, it's a pretty even split, almost 30% across the board.
Those are interesting responses.
Yeah, so you can kind of see, right? It varies quite a bit depending on kind of who you are, maybe geographical region, what your focus is. So thank you, team. Now I want to get into the conversation of retail and B2B, right? We talk about diversity. I think having a good mix of both is going to be very beneficial. With regards maybe to pricing these two different types of merchant accounts, Michael, how do you see them differing in the market?
With B2B, there's, I think, a lot of pricing opportunity and flexibility. With retail, restaurant, and card present, there's just that I would liken it to a funnel where it's just a continuous squeeze. Everyone's trying to squeeze every penny out of those accounts, and as soon as you make a sale, the worry is that within the next month, someone else is going to walk in the door and offer 5 cents less, or some smaller, some incremental decrease in the pricing. And there's a lot of, movement in that market. With B2B, it's people think a lot longer term, and it's kind of an investment in their card acceptance. And so if they're going to invest in systems and processes and think about how, not just, when someone comes to the counter to make a transaction in the B2B space, they're thinking, this one customer may have, over the life of the relationship, several monthly recurring transactions. And so they think in terms of monthly income and cash flow, and it's a different way of thinking. And so the pricing strategy has to be a little bit flexible in terms of not just going down a couple cents or a basis point in the discount rate or something, but holistically, how does this make sense in the in the business model that the company is in for, cash flow, accounts receivable, how a customer is going to pay, how often they're going to pay. I don't know if that's answering your question, but it's a different animal.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's a good answer. And essentially, right, I'm hearing that retail and more B2C is going to be a lot more price sensitive. Merchant accounts, right? Kind of the race to the bottom is what we keep hearing, a race to the basement, race to zero, right? Really, who can drive down their costs the lowest? And I think that's really been indicative of new programs like, cash discounting, some of those non-cash programs for passing the cost of processing onto the consumer, which we'll talk about maybe a little bit here in a sec. But what I'm hearing on the B2B side is that it's much less price sensitivity as more value driven, right? Increasing cash flow is a big deal, right? Operational efficiency and recurring billing and a lot more of these other functions that are brought to the table, right, can help back the cost of the processing of the collusion of the card acceptance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me ask you about this then. So we've had some discussions about cash discounting, right? People's ears perk up when I bring that up. What do you think of cash discounting in terms of the B2B space or even in retail space? Just what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, cash discounting has its place. I think it's profitable and it's easy. There are short sales cycles. It removes a lot of barriers to entry into the market. A lot of merchants are accepting cards because it's cost effective for them to do that, instead of having to factor in 3 to 5% in just pure cost. And so cash discounting definitely has its benefits. But like we started at the beginning of the conversation, we're talking about diversification. And so if you're, that shouldn't be the only thing that you're focused on, because it can have a very short lifespan, and it's not. I wouldn't call it a very loyal part of the market because it's price driven, and so there's no relational. I hate to use the word stickiness because it's kind of a buzzword, but that's what it is. I mean, there's not that glue that holds the business relationship together if it's just a commodity that you're offering someone free processing. And so, that gets to be a little bit of a hamster wheel that you just have to, stay on. But so do that, keep that as part of the portfolio, but add to it, the B2B clients, who, by the way, also they're price sensitive too. I mean, let's not pretend that B2B clients aren't price sensitive. They are, but there's a value context in the price. The price means something compared to the value that they're getting for that price. And so, there is a place in the B2B market for cash discount, not cash discounting, but surcharging, right? Sure. Let's get the terminology right. But we're starting to see more of that. In fact, we have a surcharging partner that we're working with. It's an integration that we just started, Sam, in the last year. Yeah. So that is starting to take off. So it does have it's not nearly as common, I think, in the B2B space yet as it is in the quick retail part of the market. So, and a lot of that has to do with just the complexity of a B2B client. Yeah. So
totally agree. Just my 2 cents on the kind of passing the cost on to the consumer. Right now we kind of are in this golden age of cash discount or any sort of these programs, non-cash adjustment, surcharging, right? There's a bunch of these now where we're essentially resetting, right? Now there's a lot more margin out there for people that want to take advantage of it. But here, the risk with that is it's essentially starting a new race to the bottom, right? Now that the cost is being passed on to the consumer, well, what's stopping the next guy from coming in and saying, well, if you're passing on 4%, work with me and we'll pass on 3.75%, right? And it just keeps squeezing any sort of margin and profitability out of that.
Yeah. Well, and sorry, one more thought on that. If you, as soon as you take the price component out of the relationship,
Mm-hmm.
the merchant doesn't have to worry about price anymore. So they're going to be focused on things like, does the system work how it should? When I call, do I get support? When I call my rep, do they answer the phone? Do they,
Yeah.
Do they check in on me? Is regardless of the price and who pays for the price, do I like what I'm getting? Am I happy about it? Does the system work right? Or am I always on the phone for support? And so that it's starting to shift into the importance of relational sales, which is takes us in more the direction of the B2B sale anyway. So people who are getting good at that are going to be better in the B2B market anyway.
Right. So kind of shifting gears back to B2B, right? We talked about, you mentioned surcharging, which I think I might want to elaborate that on a little bit, but I think there's another way to help manage price or mitigate, right, high cost of card, which is of course level 2 and level 3, right? We can't go through a webinar without mentioning that. I think with a lot of our partners that first got onto this a decade ago, I think there wasn't a lot of thought about strategically pricing out some of these accounts in a way that's both very profitable for you and still drives a good price for the merchant. Michael, if somebody's out there selling new business to B2B, what advice would you give them when they're trying to price out an account with level 2 and level 3?
So a pretty common question that we get is, how do I know if I can save them money, right? What's the initial conversation look like in terms of the sales process? So Sam, you had a statement at some point, so I don't know if now is a good time to bring that up, but I'll just kind of introduce the idea of looking at a statement. You're looking for, this is just kind of the practical nuts and bolts of how do you know if a merchant is a good candidate for level 2, level 3 savings. There you go. So you're looking for, well, first of all, let's very basically, I mean, these are, some people might understand this already. This might be a refresher. Great. Some people, this is new information. So hopefully it's helpful, but level 2 and 3 interchange rates are for business, corporate, commercial purchase, basically non-consumer cards. And so level 2 are going to be your business cards primarily, that will have a certain amount of savings. Level 3 is going to be purchase cards, corporate cards, commercial cards. And that's where the majority of the savings opportunity are. So basically, on a very simple level, when you look at a statement, you're looking for interchange categories that reflect business cards, commercial cards, corporate cards, purchasing cards, and you're looking for how they're currently qualifying. Right. So if you're not seeing level 2, level 3, that means they're probably qualifying at, standard or even IRF or some other way that those cards are qualifying. So there's your opportunity, is to, if you've seen those cards and they're not qualifying at level 2 and level 3, that's your opportunity that you can get them to qualify at level 2 or 3.
Right. So in this statement, right, you can actually see they were doing some level 2 and level 3, but their biggest line item was at standard. It was $6,000 in settled funds at a pretty high rate, right? This is just an interchange. This isn't even the full merchant discount. So, their highest expense on this was these purchasing cards, which, with level 3 qualification on this would have slashed this down by about, I did the math, it was about $70 that just this one line item would have been reduced. I even have another one here. That previous one was very easy to read, but like Michael said, right, the terminology you want to look for is business, purchasing, corporate, government, GSA. So when we're going through here, right, bus means business, got it, corporate, purchasing, right? And you can look at the numbers, and if it's closer to 2%, that's probably pretty good. If it's closer to 3%, means that there's probably some opportunity for improvement there in interchange qualification. So when I look at this very bottom column here, it's a purchasing card, and they're processing $22,000 at 3%, right? I can tell you just by looking at this statement that they are way overpaying on their processing. And this isn't the money that goes towards the processor, right? This is the money that goes towards interchange, towards the banks. So looking at this, I can see a lot of flexibility. Now, when we are doing this, and I apologize, Michael, I know I'm on my soapbox here, but I'm in the zone.
That's fine. Go for it.
When we actually look at the interchange rates, and team, I'd really encourage you guys, go on our website and go to this interchange page. It's under our resources tab, but we have all these different rates, right? If we really are trying to drive down price for these merchants, I think it's really important to know what these rates are, but also know that this isn't coming off of your margin, right? This isn't affecting your profitability when we're essentially saving these accounts money, right? So, oops, don't have my pointer here, but you can see, right? If a merchant's keying in cards on some solution, or they're qualifying it standard and they're accepting these corporate purchasing cards, they're not cheap, right? But by putting them on a level 2 or level 3 solution, right, we can help drive down that cost. Now, one of the things I think we're missing from this is, right, your value, right? You are not having to cannibalize your own profitability to do this, right? Whereas in retail, that's pretty common pricing strategies. Let's just knock off 20 basis points and we'll get the account, right? In this, you don't have to. Michael, I mean, I don't know if you have any examples, but I've seen many of our partners actually come in and increase, right, their rates on top of what the merchant was already paying, and they're still saving, a substantial amount of money.
Right, exactly. On that chart that was just on the screen there. Well, in the example that we saw in the statement too, it was 295 was 2.95% plus 10 cents was the rate they were qualifying at. The best rate on the chart that you just showed was 1.9%. So you're saving just by solutioning the merchant with a gateway like PayTrace that can achieve level 2 and 3 interchange qualifications. You're saving the merchant over 100 basis points. So that leaves quite a bit of margin that you don't have to lower any other rates. In fact, it's up to you. Pricing is well within, your ability to take from the interchange savings and maybe increase your margin on the discount rate, or, there's a lot of different ways to price, but I'll just leave it at the fact that you've got over 100 basis points now to work with. So you don't have to necessarily pass all of that savings to the merchant. If you want to, great. Maybe they're overpriced, and to get the business, you do also, in addition to the interchange savings, you also might have to lower the rate a little bit. It's all, I guess, case by case, individual circumstances, and you all know what is the best course of action to win the business. But the good thing throughout all of this is that a couple different things are happening when you have this conversation. You are presenting savings, but you're also presenting efficiency and better processes, and you're solving problems for the merchant instead of just price. So we talked earlier about selling just on price and how that's a little bit dangerous, because all it takes is someone who's willing to go a little bit lower, and that's, there's not a lot of stickiness there with the relationship. But as soon as you introduce these other value components, like, problem solving and process efficiency, and those things are in addition to savings, what make a relationship last a lot longer. So that's the thing about the B2B space, is that it's once you earn a client, it tends to be for a longer period of time.
Right. I think we dove into data a few years back to kind of track retention, and I think the average PayTrace account stays for somewhere between 4 to 7 years. So it is very sticky, right? Compared to business to consumer, which is closer to about a year or two that they'll stick with a processor. I know we're coming up on time here pretty quick. I did want to dive into some of the Q&A that I've been seeing in here. A couple of the earlier questions are about surcharging, right? We kind of mentioned that at a high level. Michael, let me ask you this. Well, actually, so I'll read this question out from Barry. Barry feels like surcharging will upset the customer and might be a bad idea. Thoughts on that? I'm happy to tackle this as well.
I was closing the window. Go ahead, you first.
So Barry, I'll tell you my thoughts on surcharging with B2B. I think surcharging has a really strong place in the non-card acceptors for B2B, right? If they're currently priced out on Interchange Plus or right, some way that they're paying for card today, unless it's a really large expense that they want to try passing off, I think it could be a bad idea because they would strongly move towards ACH in that case. But for the non-card acceptors today that still want to accept cards, because when you think about it, consumers want to pay with card, right? There's no benefit to them by paying with check, by paying with ACH, but with cards, they get rewards, they get points, they get, all sorts of benefits, cash back. So for a lot of B2B merchants that are not accepting card today, surcharging can be a really great introductory product because it's not really costing them much, if anything, to introduce a solution like that, but it still allows their customers a new method of payment, right? It gives them options, which I think just having the options there is going to increase, your relationship with your consumers. Question from Leanne in here, is surcharging available on Payment Link Virtual Terminal? How does our current solution work? Michael, if you want to maybe tackle that one.
Sorry, I'm reading the question. Is surcharging available on the Payment Link? So our surcharging solution is available through the virtual terminal, and it's not as simple as maybe a retail version of cash discounting or surcharging. So there's a little bit more of a setup process where you'd want to go through and have a kind of a setup meeting, maybe a demo with our integration partner that does surcharging. So it's not complex. I guess that's not the word I want to use, but it's just not as simple as here, use a tabletop terminal and it's free basically. But to answer your question directly, it's available in the virtual terminal.
Yeah, and just to be very clear about this, Leanne, this is not a native PayTrace solution. This is using an integrator called Interpayments, who's one of our partners. We did a spotlight with them a few months back. So if any of you guys have surcharging opportunities, especially in the B2B space, where we can tandem both level 3 to get the lowest interchange rates to pass on to that on that surcharge, it's a really great solution, and it would be on a virtual terminal. So we're happy to point you in the right direction if you reach out to us, sales@paytrace.com, if you have any of those opportunities. We'll have time for maybe one more question here, and I'll grab it from Todd. What's up, Todd? We saw in some statements that we showed as examples earlier, some downgrades, some standards, some IRFs, some non-quals, whatever they're called now. Michael, what are some of the ways that you would say that we could do to mitigate those downgrades?
Well, they could use our gateway. It would be that would solve most of their issues.
Yeah.
Well, let's think of why downgrades occur. Sometimes it's because they store the transaction for too long, or they don't collect the right information. There's some, especially in level 2 and level 3, there's a lot of additional data elements that have to be passed. So in level 2, there's, I think, Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, like 5 additional data elements, things like sales tax and of course AVS and invoice number and things like that. On level 3, there are like 20 additional data fields. They get pretty granular. And so if they're missing any of those data fields, or if they don't meet the data requirements for that specific field, that'll cause a downgrade as well. So it really does. I mean, I joked in the beginning about using the PayTrace gateway, but it really does matter if you have the right solution to process the data in the right way in the right timeframes. That will eliminate most of the downgrades that occur. I'm trying to think of, so if they're not using a solution like ours, I think the most common tend to be they're either not collecting something, not passing something correctly, or storing the transaction for too long.
Yep, agreed. So best practices, right? Our gateway mitigates most of this, but use AVS. Doesn't even need to be correct, to be honest. Make sure you're not letting an authorization settle for more than 24 hours, and just let PayTrace fill in all of the level 2 and level 3, right? So team, I know that we're at time. Just to kind of put a bow on things, kind of the takeaways that I see on this are, right, diversify your portfolio, and to land some of those B2B merchants, and to make sure that, right, you're not giving away the farm. Price them out in a way that's going to be a win-win for both of you, right? Leverage statement analysis tools. We have a partner called ISOAMP. You can send them your statements, and they'll plug out a quote for you using some AI technology. So really would recommend something like that if you need that resource. But right, these should be very profitable accounts. They should have good margins and last you for a long amount of time. So it's good to have them in your portfolio. And then the last thing I want to ask the group here to kind of wrap things up is, do you have any opportunities today in B2B or in any type of merchant that you think might be a good fit for PayTrace that you'd like some assistance with, or you'd like to discuss with somebody on our team? So I'm going to leave this poll up. Please respond yes if you want to be contacted, or not now. That's all good. I'm going to leave this up as we wrap up. Michael, I want to thank you, man. This was fun. It went by really quickly. We might have to make a part 2 because we have a lot more that I think we want to talk about. But I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for the chat, Sam. Very, very informative, and always fun to talk about, salesy kind of stuff and PayTrace. It's kind of my thing.
Awesome. All right. Well, team, thank you again for attending this Power30. If you watch this on our YouTube channel, check out some of our other videos, subscribe to it, like it, all that good stuff. And we'll see you out here on some future webinars. Take care.